I had been in a relationship with Emily 24F for 2 fulfilling years, having met through mutual friends who set us up on a blind date that surprisingly clicked. As a software developer with a stable income, I naturally contributed more financially to our shared life, especially after Emily resigned from her sales job to pursue business school, funded by her parents. This transition meant I took on the bulk of our living expenses, a responsibility I willingly shouldered, confident that Emily would contribute once she completed her studies. Our relationship was strong, and I had been planning to propose for a while. After purchasing the ring and finally popping the question, Emily happily said yes, and we began planning our engagement party to celebrate with our friends and family. However, what should have been a joyous occasion took an unexpected turn. During the party, Emily pulled me aside abruptly, insisting on a private conversation. To my surprise, her entire group of friends, a clique she had known since high school, was gathered in the room. These friends, while wealthy and accustomed to luxury, had always been a separate part of Emily's life from our own. Emily, unlike them, came from a more modest background, though it never seemed to affect their friendships. In that tense moment, Emily revealed that she and her friends had discussed a bachelorette trip to an exotic beach destination for a week-long stay at a luxury hotel. She then dropped the bombshell she expected me to foot the bill for not just her, but for all 6 of her friends as well. This extravagant demand caught me off guard, especially considering the significant expense involved. I hesitated, trying to process the request and the implications. Despite my discomfort, I tried to handle the situation diplomatically, expressing my support for her having a bachelorette trip, but explaining that I couldn't afford to cover such a lavish expense entirely on my own. I suggested she explore other funding options, such as pooling resources with her friends or finding a more budget-friendly alternative. Unfortunately, my refusal didn't sit well with Emily or her friends. They seemed incredulous and started questioning why I couldn't simply finance their trip, citing my stable income as a reason it shouldn't be an issue. The atmosphere grew tense and I felt pressured and misunderstood. Emily reiterated that she would repay me once she found a job, but I stood firm, explaining that it wasn't just about the money but also the principle of responsible financial planning. As the evening progressed, tensions escalated, and our disagreement spilled over into a heated argument. It became clear that Emily and I had different expectations about finances and responsibilities within our relationship. Feeling overwhelmed and disappointed by her reaction and the pressure from her friends, I made the difficult decision to call off our engagement then and there. Since then, Emily's parents have reached out, pleading for us to reconcile. They emphasize Emily's love for me and the misunderstanding that led to the fallout. Despite their appeals, I find myself questioning the foundation of our relationship and whether our values and expectations truly align for a future together. This experience has been deeply challenging and has forced me to reevaluate what I want in a partner and a relationship moving forward. That amount of money was outrageous, and I wasn't ready to spend it. I told her that unless she could cover the cost herself, she'd have to cancel the trip. After saying this, I left the room, uncomfortable discussing money with her friends present. I expected her to drop the subject with all the guests around, but she followed me into the living room, still talking about the trip. She was being extremely stubborn, insisting she would pay me back and just needed my help this once. She explained that she and her friends had been planning this trip for years, and it was special because she was about to be the first in the group to get married. She emphasized how significant this moment was for all of them, and how it was supposed to be a cherished memory before they all went their separate ways. I tried to make her understand that our wedding was supposed to be special for us as well. I pointed out that if I decided to sponsor the trip for all of them, I'd likely be broke by the time of the wedding, and we'd end up getting married in a courthouse. While it wasn't entirely true because my parents were covering some wedding expenses, she didn't need to know that. I still had to bear the cost of whatever my parents didn't pay for. I wanted her to stop talking about the trip because it seemed absurd and financially irresponsible. Despite my attempts to reason with her, she kept arguing with me in hushed tones. None of my arguments seemed to deter her. We were trying to keep our voices down so nobody would overhear us, but both of us were getting increasingly agitated. Our guests were starting to notice the tension between us. After some time, I suggested that we put the argument on hold and talk about it once the party was over. This suggestion only made her angrier. She lost her composure and started throwing a full-blown temper tantrum in the middle of the party. She screamed at me, accusing me of being selfish and insisting that it was just a trip I needed to pay for. She said I earned enough money to afford it, and the only reason I wasn't agreeing was because I was too selfish. Her meltdown continued as she explained how she and her friends had always wanted a wonderful bachelorette trip before they got married, and went their separate ways. She accused me of ruining that dream by being self-centered and incredibly stingy. By then, I was feeling really upset. I yelled right back at her, reminding her that I had been the one supporting both of us for the past year. I pointed out that I knew she couldn't afford to contribute to our expenses as much as I did, and now that she was about to go to business school, I was ready to take on the entire responsibility of all household expenses so she could achieve her goals. Even after all this, if she still thought I was selfish, then maybe she shouldn't be with me. I told her that I didn't want to be with her anymore after what she just said. She started crying and then ran out of the house. Soon after, all the guests started leaving. Her parents apologized to me for her behavior before they left, but the damage was already done. I didn't sleep a wink that night, constantly checking my phone, expecting Emily to call or text me. But she didn't do any of those things. Only the next day did I hear about her, and it wasn't from her. Her parents called me and asked me to talk to her and bring her back home. They explained that Emily had a long-standing issue with trying to fit in with her friends, who were wealthier and often made extravagant plans that she couldn't afford. They hoped she would grow out of this behavior, but it hadn't happened. Her parents told me that Emily was too proud to admit to her friends that she couldn't afford a fancy bachelorette trip. She wanted to fit in with them and prove that her life was just as fabulous as theirs. This need to prove herself had always been a part of her personality, and it had gone way out of hand this time, jeopardizing our relationship. They said her friends could probably afford to sponsor a bachelorette trip for all 6 of them, because their parents had the kind of money that allowed them to do so. Unfortunately, Emily didn't have that kind of financial backing, and neither did I. Emily's parents explained that she wasn't ready to apologize because she was still feeling raw from what happened the previous evening. They begged me to talk to her and convince her to come back. She was living in a hotel at the moment, and they were worried about the expense. Emily didn't have the money to live in a hotel indefinitely, and her parents were hoping I would take care of her financially while she attended business school. If we broke up, it would mean financial trouble for Emily and her parents. They thought it wasn't worth letting such a petty argument come in the way of our relationship. They told me that they had spoken to Emily, but she was still upset and not ready to come back on her own. They hoped that I could talk some sense into her and help her understand the bigger picture. They didn't want this argument to ruin what they believed was a strong relationship. They reminded me of the good times we had shared and how much we meant to each other. They asked me to consider how much we had been through together and not let this one argument destroy everything we had built. I understood their concerns, but I was still deeply hurt by the events of the previous night. Emily's unwillingness to see reason and her public outburst had shaken me. I needed some time to process everything before deciding what to do next. Her parents' plea made me realize how complex the situation was, and how much was at stake, not just for us but for her entire family. In the end, I agreed to think about it, and promised her parents that I would talk to Emily. However, I needed to make sure that we both understood the importance of financial responsibility and mutual respect in our relationship. If we were to move forward, we had to address these underlying issues and find a way to communicate better and support each other's goals without jeopardizing our future. After I told Emily I didn't want to be with her anymore, she took it really hard. She was very upset and didn't bring up anything about the trip or other issues. She was just focused on my decision to break up. She felt that breaking up was a huge decision and was hurt that I seemed to make it impulsively without giving it a second thought or following up with her. Of course, she was right. I didn't try to reach out or talk to her afterward. I was actually expecting her to talk to me because she started the fight and lost her temper first. It doesn't seem unreasonable to want her to come and clear the air. The fight began because she was being unreasonable about the trip. It felt extremely entitled for her to believe that I would not only support her until she graduated from business school but also give in to all her whims and fancies just because she wanted me to. I have my own life and financial responsibilities, and unlike her, I didn't feel comfortable asking my parents for money. I wanted to rely on myself. Despite everything, I still want to make things work because, apart from this incident, Emily has been the best partner I've ever had. I genuinely want to be with her, but I don't think I did anything wrong by saying I wanted to break up when she threw a tantrum at our engagement party. So, I decided to talk to Emily, not to apologize or get back together immediately, but to gain clarity on what will happen next. Many of you advised me to break up with her, saying her behavior at the party was a significant red flag, and I understand that perspective. However, I can't end this relationship without at least having a conversation to understand what went wrong and see if it can be fixed. My gut tells me I need to talk to her, so that's what I decided to do. I sent her a text this morning. It's been about a week since she left, and her parents have been relentlessly texting me, trying to convince me to take her back, but she hasn't replied yet. I even considered going to see her at the hotel where she's staying. Her parents told me where she was, but I think that might be taking things too far. It might come off as a grand romantic gesture, but if she's still mad, it could just seem creepy, and I don't want to take that risk. So, I decided to stick to texting and wait for her reply. I sent her the classic "we need to talk" text, and she probably knows this conversation won't be comfortable or pleasant. Like all couples, Emily and I have had fights before, but none were this serious. None of our previous fights ever led to a breakup because we always knew we wanted to make it work and stay together. This is the first time either of us has moved out and refused to talk to the other person for more than 2 days. Usually when we fight, we make up within a couple of days, because it's pretty hard to live together and not speak. However, after she left, she didn't try to contact me even once, so I had to be the one to break the ice. I guess the reason I'm rambling is that I'm nervous about what will happen next. She might break up with me or create a situation where I have to leave, and I really don't want that to happen because, despite everything, she's the best girlfriend I've ever had, and I love her. Update: Emily finally replied to my text. She said she wants to make things work but read my post here and didn't like what she saw about herself. She took full responsibility for her actions, which was surprising but nice to hear. She doesn't want to discuss this over the phone and believes it would be better for us to meet in person, so we're going to meet for lunch tomorrow. She's going to drive to my workplace, and we'll go to a nearby restaurant so I can get back to work quickly, which was thoughtful of her. I appreciate her willingness to meet and talk things through, but I'm still unsure if we'll be able to work things out, or if we'll end up breaking up. She didn't sound too happy in her texts, and her parents have stopped trying to reach out to me. I don't think that's a good sign, because it might mean they've given up on us. If they've given up, it might mean they don't want us to get back together, or maybe they just don't care enough about it. Either way, even if we do break up, I think it's better for us to at least meet one last time, talk things through, and then part ways instead of letting that fight at the party be our last conversation. We deserve a better ending than that. Most of you on this subreddit believe things should be over between us because her behavior was inexcusable, and I do agree that what she did at the party was ridiculously stupid. However, I still feel the need to see if there's any way to resolve things before making a final decision. We've had a lot of good times together, and I don't want to throw that away without at least trying to understand what went wrong and if we can fix it. This relationship has been a significant part of my life, and I want to make sure that if it ends for the right reasons, with both of us understanding why. So, I'll meet with Emily tomorrow and see where things go from there. I don't want to let go, and I genuinely want to work things out between us. I even dream of us getting married someday. It might sound naive or even foolish, but I know her well enough to believe that this could work. Aside from the negative influence of her VAP and her misguided friends, she's truly a kind and wonderful person. Unfortunately, she got caught up in the wrong crowd, which led to her acting out. This was the first time something like this had happened, and I truly believe she wouldn't have yelled at me like that if it weren't for her friends putting silly ideas into her head. She should have thought for herself instead of just going along with what they said. Despite everything that has happened, I believe we should stay together and work through our issues. We can seek couples counseling if necessary, but the important thing is that we actively try to resolve the situation rather than just giving up on it. I don't believe in quitting relationships, and while I don't know if this is a good or a bad thing, I am committed to making this work. Update 3: we met today, and unfortunately it's over. I don't know what I was expecting or why I thought anything different might happen, but I was foolish to believe that we could work this out and stay together. She returned the ring and told me she would come back in a couple of days to collect her belongings. Saying she left some things behind is an understatement, because she left almost everything. I didn't ask where she was planning to live. I'm sure her friends and others will be helping her out. It just hurts that we're not going to be together anymore, and that I won't wake up to see her face every day. I hate quitting relationships, and this was by far my best relationship, so I'm devastated that it's coming to an end. Our conversation wasn't easy. She told me she had read my initial post here but hadn't gone through the updates because she already knew what was happening. More importantly, she couldn't bring herself to read those updates because reading the original post was hard enough. It was about her, and it opened her eyes to some difficult truths. She realized she wasn't doing anything worthwhile with her life and was just floating by. She said she didn't want to rely on me or her parents anymore, and wanted to make something of herself first. She also told me she appreciated everything I had done for her, and was willing to do for her in the future. She felt it would be strange to thank me, but she really wanted to express her gratitude. I didn't know how to react, so I just smiled, though in hindsight, I probably should have said something. To my surprise, her friends aren't as bad as I thought. After the party, they were the ones who told her she needed to apologize to me and make things right if she wanted the relationship to work. They acknowledged she was out of line, and even addressed the financial disparity between her family and theirs. They assured her they wouldn't judge her if she didn't do the same things and were willing to cover for her, but she needed to stop letting it become an ego issue and trying to fit in, especially at her age. I must say I wasn't expecting her friends to recognize her issues and actually talk to her about them, but I'm glad they did. I guess I was wrong about them. The bottom line is that the relationship is over, but at least we ended on good terms. We hugged goodbye before parting ways. I didn't cry when we were together, but as soon as I got back to the office, I had to excuse myself and visit the restroom to let my feelings out. I don't know if we'll ever get back together, but if we do, I hope it's soon, and I hope that when we do, we can make it work.